So welcome everyone. Today I am speaking to Robin Lewis about her workshop, Establish and Grow a Successful Yoga Therapy or Yoga Teaching Business. So Robin is a registered yoga therapist, yoga teacher and educator with more than a decade's experience in a wide range of settings, including school, community, corporate, as well as 8 years teaching yoga in aged care and dementia settings and in correctional environments. So in addition to that, she's also worked with NDIS clients with special needs. And before this, Robin had a distinguished career as a high school educator and a public sector senior manager. So in this workshop, she's really bringing together her expertise and experience in all of these fields, giving participants a unique perspective on how to secure work as a yoga therapist and yoga teacher in organisations. She's also completed a 4-year term on the board of Yoga Australia, and she's a senior level 3 yoga teacher, a registered yoga therapist, a registered mentor, and she's part of the Yoga Australia Council of Advisors. She's also enrolled in a PhD, and she will conduct research into best practice models of dementia care. Robin is a graduate of the Yoga Therapy Institute's graduate certificate in yoga therapy. So at the Yoga Therapy Institute, over years of working with hundreds of yoga teachers and yoga therapists, one of the things that we've noticed is that many of you are interested in working for different organisations to provide your services, whether that be small group yoga classes or therapeutic groups or one-to-one yoga therapy. And those settings range from places like residential aged care, drug and alcohol rehab, hospitals, aged care facilities, schools, and so on. But sometimes you don't have the skills to know how to present yourself or to pitch to an organisation, or perhaps you've tried and been unsuccessful. So this workshop really is designed for you, for yoga teachers and yoga therapists who want a proven system of exactly what to do and how to go about it. And this is what Robin is offering in this workshop. And so why do we need to identify the decision maker when we're researching the organisation?
Now, there's a person in each organisation that has that decision-making ability. They're the people that kind of understand the context, the service provision. So let's say it's an aged care facility. So a general manager in an aged care facility that might be part of a larger organisation has the responsibility to understand the programs that are already being delivered, the policy and procedures, and in aged care, the accreditation standards. That person also has the financial delegation to allocate funds to particular programs and to ensure that programs aren't being duplicated. So if I go to an aged care facility and I say I'm a yoga therapist or a yoga teacher, and they say, oh, well, we've got occupational therapists or we've got physiotherapists, this is where the research comes in, that we need to understand what other services are being provided in a facility so that you can create a coherent story for that person. And it's just not going to cut it to go to, in an aged care facility, a recreation person or an administrative person or a carer, because they just don't have the decision-making capability. It has to be the general manager. Now, this can be scary because going to, a director or a general manager who are, time poor, it can be scary. So this is where the skills and knowledge that will come through the workshop really help people to understand the steps about what we do step by step, to understand the organisation, to understand the environment, to understand the research, and then prepare and anticipate what are the questions that are going to be asked when that person asks these questions, so that it, as I said before, it is enticing for that person and they think we have to have this service because this is of benefit to our clients. So, yeah.
Robin, can you talk a bit about aligning and tailoring your services to the organisation and why it's so important?
Each organisation or organisational type usually has linkages or levers or policy that they're required to meet. And so what I mean by that is, for example, if I'm talking about schools, school education has to comply with the national curriculum, the Australian curriculum. And so I would call that a linkage or a lever. So if you think about the work that classroom teachers are doing, they have to meet curriculum standards. So if, and I have done this on many occasions, going in to talk to a school principal who is a decision maker, I would refer to the Australian curriculum and how the yoga that I would be teaching in small groups or large groups aligns with the Australian curriculum. So this is where it becomes very enticing for a decision maker to take on these services, because it's not an additional thing to do, because you would imagine that schools are always being bombarded with try this product or try this product. But if we're tailoring a conversation to a school principal, decision maker, around something that aligns to a lever, like school, Australian school curriculum, it becomes quite an enticing opportunity for them to tick off, or the classroom teachers to tick off the requirements of the Australian curriculum through a program like yoga. And I've found that in my work in pitching to different organisations, there's usually a linkage or a lever. And so in aged care, it might be accreditation standards, and in corporate settings, it might be legislation around work health and safety. So we as yoga professionals can explore these linkages or levers as something that we would talk about within our pitch. And really, you know, when you do your pitch, you don't have very long. These people are very busy. So within the workshop, I'll be talking about how to structure that pitch to you know, get to the key points, to talk about the linkages and the levers, the services that would be provided. And then that usually leads to an opportunity to try the service, or it might even lead to the contract. Now, sometimes it doesn't work, you know, on rare occasions, if the people have allocated their funding for particular services, it may not work, so it's not 100% guaranteed, but it has been extremely successful. And particularly if you can link into other organisations that are doing similar things, for example, in schools, if you know of another school, and this is where your research would come in, if you know of other schools that are doing a yoga program, you can talk about that, and that can become very much of interest to the decision maker as well. So those linkages might be hard to find, but when we do the environmental scan and the research about the organisation, they're usually quite evident, and we can package those into the pitch. So this is where, you know, it is a unique approach for each type of demographic or organisation.
That's right. Just like yoga therapy, it's not a cookie cutter approach. We really need to tailor everything, don't we, Robin?
And then the other part, once you've done the pitch, there's, you know, what do I do when I'm setting up this agreement? So I'll talk about, and we'll explore together in the workshop, the contract. And so setting up, you know, it's not a template, but it's an agreement between the organisation and yourself when you're starting work about, you know, what's the duty of care? What's my scope of practice? Who else am I working alongside? So for example, in the aged care setting, you know, you're working alongside allied health professionals. So you might be working alongside occupational therapists and physiotherapists. You're working with activity coordinators. And it's, you know, because if you're running your own business as a yoga teacher or a yoga therapist, you're kind of working, unless you're in a team, you don't have that sense of team and creating that coherent service delivery. But I've found working in aged care, I'm working in partnership with the physiotherapist. We're working, talking about the two programs that we run, how they differ, how they align. And so that can be an awesome opportunity for a yoga professional, particularly if you've been in another professional setting where you are used to working in a team. You know, that development of contract, that development of partnership, that development of working relationships can be a really important consideration as you move through. And then there's problem solving. Of course, you know, it's not all sweetness when we work in these settings. There's always challenges in any setting. So thinking about some of those real life examples that I'll be covering in the workshop around, you know, things that kind of pop up during our teaching and our practice, you know, and so we can be prepared about how to deal with those you know, as professionals.
So, Robin, in terms of people who are interested in maybe working in an eating disorders clinic or in hospitals or in a rehab or addiction centre, will this work also apply to them?
The structure and the approach can be applied any setting. So I'll be providing examples of the 3 different settings that I've worked in as a yoga teacher and yoga therapist: aged care, dementia, aged care/dementia, schools and corporate settings. But I've also used this approach in pitching and creating contract for a judicial environment or into a prison environment and other settings as well. So if people were interested in an eating disorder clinic or a hospital setting, it pretty much is the same principle. You would still need to do your homework, your preparation, understand who a decision maker is. With a big organisation, you're going to have more choice of decision makers because there are more people with delegation to approve programs and expenditure for programs. Small organisations, it comes down to one person. So this is where I suppose that it's not a cookie cutter approach, that we do need to be thinking, discerning what's the organisation that I'm interested to enter, what's the environmental scan, what's the research that sits behind it, how do I prepare my pitch. But I believe it could be overlaid into a pitch for any work.
Thanks, Robin. Robin's system has been tried and tested, and because of her background, and she's been able to put this process together, that she's really developed over more than 3 decades with bringing her skills from all these different careers that she's mentioned. So yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of smart yoga professionals out there who, through trial and error and hard work, will have figured out their own process to get work in these organisations. But if you don't have a successful process for getting work, then for a small investment of $199, you will have this proven formula laid out for you. And then you just need to put it into practice. So there really is nothing else like this workshop on the market at this price point. I'm sure you can pay thousands of dollars for a marketing coach or a sales coach, but you still won't get this information from someone who is in our community and who has done it successfully. So we look forward to you joining us